One of the questions I get asked a lot when it comes to live visual note taking or graphic recording or live scribing, whatever you'd like to call it, is how do you fit the content to the page? So I'm going to break that down for you today. We're going to delve into the mathematics of fitting your sketch note to your page. Now I'm going to do this by talking about the three phases: before, during, and after you scribe. I'm also going to talk about pen and paper and digital because it's a little bit different depending on how you are going about taking these notes.
Hi, I'm Hayley, Chief Doodler at Thoughts Drawn Out. I'm all about getting creativity working so I can help you to make your mark.
Okay, so let's jump straight in. So I said I'm going to look at before, during, and after the note-taking process, pen and paper, and digital. So let's start pen on paper. So one of the things that I'm doing in my setup, if I'm going to be live note-taking, is I'm coming up with a bit of a plan for how I think content is going to hit my page. Now, important tip number one is, yes, have a plan, but never make a plan so firm or so fixed that you can't change it on the fly, because remaining flexible is key to a successful live scribe. So I will have done some pre-work in terms of, is there an agenda for the event that I am scribing, and what does the makeup of that event look like? Because I can think about the sort of content that's going to be generated. What I mean by this is a keynote speaker delivering a presentation with a pre-created slide deck and they know what they want to say. You're going to get a lot of content out of something like that. It's going to take up a lot of real estate on your page. Versus there might be a section on an agenda where people are breaking into smaller groups to brainstorm something, and then they're just going to do a playback to the rest of the group at the end. You're not going to get as much content out of a session like that onto your page, because really all you are going to be able to do is maybe listen in to the various groups while they're talking, and then whatever they summarize back at the end, and that there might only be 15 minutes dedicated to that piece. That's where your content is going to be coming from. So while a brainstorming workshop might take up 3 times the amount of time on the event agenda, it's not going to generate as much content on your page as the keynote presentations will. So kind of looking at the makeup of the agenda and how you think the content is going to come out is kind of step one. I also look at things like obviously the amount of time overall for the event, the number of sessions, because you might want to make sure you're representing every session. So I'm just having a little bit of a play around with that rough draft in my head before I even begin, before I even get to the venue on the day. I'm kind of thinking this through. And there might be a particular map or style or layout that I think is going to work for the style of content. Okay, so when you hit the event, you have a plan in mind before the actual content starts. The other thing that I like to do is any of those key details that I know I can get up onto my page before the session starts that aren't going to change, I will go ahead and do those. So if there is a title for the event and I want to get that nice and big up the top or in the middle or wherever I'm planning, I'll go ahead and do that before the session actually starts. If I want to do a particular border design, although I do like to leave those to the end a lot as well. But any of that sort of piece, I might start ahead of the session. Because that way I can kind of set the scale for the rest of the page, because you want it to kind of look like it works together. If you have a tiny little heading, you're probably not going to do anything bigger than that heading anywhere else on the page, or it's going to look unbalanced. So Choosing that style, size, placement of the heading you can be doing before the content starts, and it's going to set the tone. Now, tip, definite trap for young players. Never pre-do stuff on your page that could change. So even if they say we're going to run 3 times 30-minute sessions and you put up 3 sections ready to go, your facilitator can change their mind, can misjudge the time commitment. They'll make changes on the fly, and if you've committed to something that hasn't happened yet, you can be stuck with a page that no longer works, because we're not doing 3 sessions. Now we're only doing 2, or now we're doing 5. Have the idea in your mind, but don't commit it to the page until you're sure that that's what's actually going to happen. Same goes with the names of presenters. Don't write them all up on your sheet or your page or whatever you're working on until you're sure that those names are correct, because I have had it happen where, yes, these are the names, they're on the agenda, they're printed up, and then someone gets sick, someone gets stuck in traffic and doesn't get back in time to present their session. It's happened, and there's their name drawn up. Now they're not part of the event. So never pre-do stuff that could change on you. You can have a pre-plan in your mind, even on a sketch, but don't commit it to the page. Now, the next big thing that you are doing to make sure your content is going to fit the page is what you're doing while the session is happening, while the content is coming at you. And I like to describe this as a constant series of micro adjustments. So I'm listening, I'm synthesizing, I'm processing the content, I'm getting it onto the page, and then I'm always kind of thinking back to how is my page filling versus what I know is happening on the agenda. Does it make sense? And therefore, do I need to make micro adjustments to either the size of what I'm capturing, the detail of what I'm capturing, the number of words, the size of the pictures, that sort of thing. Now, keep in mind, this isn't about I'm halfway through the page and we're halfway through the agenda, because not every session is going to give you the same amount of content. Remember, if you have keynote presentations, they will give you more content than a workshop. So it's not just about time, it's also about type of content and how well your page is filling relative to what you know is still to come. So you're making these micro adjustments as you go. If you think, oh, I'm going to run out of space here, I need to scale back, it might be that you start literally decreasing the size a little bit of what you are writing or drawing, or capturing slightly less detail, maybe just a key word instead of a full sentence, that sort of thing. And you can kind of scale that. Don't make drastic changes so that it looks completely different to what you've already got. That's why I say micro adjustments. If you're constantly micro adjusting, you will find a way to kind of balance it out in the end, and it's not going to look ridiculous on your page. So I always aim for too much white space rather than too much content, because if you run out of space and there's still a whole other session to go and your page is full and you have no more paper, that's a problem. Getting to the end and finding that there's still white space on your page, well, that is easier to address. That's easier to do something about. So I always err on the side of more white space. So once you get to the end and you've got this extra white space, it allows you to do a couple of things. The first is take a breather, think back through the content from the session, the day, however long it's been, compare it to what you're seeing in front of you and go, does this properly represent for me what my memory is telling me occurred? Are there key themes missing? Were there other things that came up that that I just don't have here on my page? And if you've preserved some white space, well, you can go back through, even if it's by kind of filling some vertical space in between sessions by stacking key theme words. That's a pattern I like to do. Adding some extra detail or characters to your icons, always adding more figures because they will always add to the life of the page. Adding, little figures, humans, characters interacting with the content. There might just be other key ideas, words, themes that came out. You can go back through when you have white space and add it in and make your summary a more kind of lush, rich capture of the content that you heard. Bit hard to do that if you've run out of space. So if you have the white space, you can allow yourself that extra pass through. It can also be that you've got to the end of the session, the official proceedings of the day are over, and people start to come over and want to interact with you and your wall. And you can talk to them at this point and get further ideas from them. They might say, oh, I loved when so-and-so said blah. And you can go, that's a great idea. I actually don't have that here. I'm going to add that in now. And you've got the space to do that, which means you can kind of have some participation happening with your recording as well. Now, if you get to the end, you've done that extra pass, you've filled in the gaps, you're pretty sure you've got an accurate representation of the content, but there's still too much paper or board or whatever it might be that you're drawing on. Well, the great thing is paper, foam core boards can be cut down to size. You can literally cut off. If you didn't go all the way down to the bottom and there's a big white band and you literally don't have anything else to put in there, you don't want to add like a giant logo in the corner or something, you can cut it off. You can trim it down to size. And this is where I like to save borders to the end, because if I'm doing this, if I've got a scribe and it's become the shape that it's going to be, it's not necessarily a perfect square or a perfect rectangle. So I might trim up my paper or my board and then use the border art to kind of frame in and square out my content and make it fit nicely into its frame. And I like to do borders that are a little bit tight, so in some places the content is bursting out of them, and then in other places they will balance a gap with the line that becomes the border. So that's one of the things I like to do right at the very end, is trim it to size and then tuck it in nicely into that border, and just gives it that container, that shape, holds it, makes it look good. The other point is that when it gets to the end of the work, sometimes the way it's going to live on is digitally. So, I mean, yes, you can still physically cut the paper or the foam core board, but if the thing is going to live on digitally, well, then you scan it or photograph it, and then that scaling and fitting to a shape happens digitally anyway. And again, much easier to do with too much white space than not enough. So I did say at the start that I was going to talk about before, during, and after, both for pen and paper and for digital. So switching gears a little bit now to talk about the digital part of the content. So a lot of these things aren't that different. I'm thinking about the same things ahead of time. So I've pre-planned what size, scale, and resolution my digital canvas needs to be based on both the content and how my customer intends to use it after the event. So I will have done that piece. I will have kind of, again, planned through the agenda how much screen real estate do I think each part of the agenda is going to require. So I've got that, a plan in mind. Now, digitally, you can be a little bit bolder and pre-draw some more stuff, because if it ends up changing or being wrong, or a speaker's name gets switched out for a different speaker, well, when it's digital, you can actually change it. So I would be more inclined to do some of that stuff if it's a digital capture than I would a pen on paper, because I know I can change it. Having said that, I don't like to faff about creating and then changing and recreating content. I think it loses a little bit of the magic of the live drawing as well. If your screen is being shared and people are watching this in creation, they want to see you draw the icon rather than one you drew before you even got there. So get that balancing act right. The other thing I would say is still try to draw your content to the right scale to fit the page the first time, because the more you faff about resizing the pieces that you've drawn, the more you're going to lose out on some clarity and some resolution in those images. And you might find you have to redraw some of them by the end if you've just been fiddling around with the dimensions too much, scaling it up, scaling it down, moving it here, moving it there. It will lose some of its definition. So you still want to kind of capture as if you are capturing pen on paper. Don't rely on your ability to do the digital editing, because you might do too much of it. You also, you don't want to rely on it too much as well, because you won't be as committed to the things that you do in real time, because you'll rely on the fact that you're going to edit. It's going to drag the time out. It's going to lose some of its magic. Even though you're digital, capture as if you're not. Capture in a way, challenge yourself to edit as little as possible and get that real-time magic happening the same way you would pen on paper. That's probably all I would add as an additional tip for the digital scribing. Otherwise, the kind of the pre-thinking, the adjusting as you go, and then the edits after are fairly much the same. And just with that added layer of digital of, yes, you can edit, but try not to edit too much. It's probably how I would summarize that. Now, I hope you found this video useful. If you're delving into the world of live visual note taking, I'm hoping this has been a helpful set of tips for you. If there are other things that you'd like to ask me about or you'd like to learn about, I've been live scribing, live note taking, graphic recording for almost a decade now. So, you know, if there's a way you can stuff it up, I've probably done it at some point in time, and I can share my learnings with you. So please let me know. What are your comments? I can make a future video to address them. If you haven't already, please like this video. Let the algorithms know that this is some cool content, so it'll show it to some other people. If you haven't subscribed already, what are you waiting for? Do that now. Do that right now. Hit subscribe. You don't want to miss any future visual storytelling goodness. Now, people, that is it. We've made it to the end. You know what that means. It's time for you to go out there and make your mark.
Thank you.